Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Yeah, today is Thursday and what a day it looks like. It's sunny. It could be great whatever you do, but hello, my name is Daniel. I'll be your host. Guy in a wheelchair. Oh, excuse my language.
Guy in the chair.
He said it! He said it!
And today we're going to be enjoying Critical Drinker's thoughts on The Last of Us Season 1. So, enjoy. Let's get ready to enjoy this.
Well, gosh darn it. Sometimes modern entertainment manages to surprise even me. Usually in a bad way, to be fair. Like when you think fantasy shows can't possibly get worse than The Rings of Power, and then along comes the double whammy of Witcher, Blood Origin, and Willow. Fuck. It was like a 1-2 punch from a boxer who dipped his gloves in human feces just before the fight. But at the other end of the spectrum was The Last of Us on HBO, a show that most fans of the games went into with about as much hope and enthusiasm as me at an AA meeting. Video game adaptations aren't exactly known as bastions of quality filmmaking, and the second game in the Last of Us franchise had left a sour taste in people's mouths. And yet, with each new episode, The Last of Us didn't just manage to hang in there, and actually seemed to get stronger and more popular. My own assessment of the first 3 episodes was cautious optimism mixed with some lingering concerns about where it was all leading. Would it stick the landing, or would it crash and burn in spectacular fashion? Well, now that I've seen the whole season, let's take a look and see how it did. You've probably seen my previous review, so I'm not going to bore you to death with another detailed plot summary. The high-level version is as follows. Zombie mushroom virus takes over the world, and 20 years later, main character has to escort the girl who's the key to everything across the country to make a cure. They fight some bad guys, dodge some infected, and gradually get to know each other until they reach their destination, where the main character has to make a tough decision about the girl who's the key to everything. The 2 biggest questions about video game adaptations can basically be boiled down to, will it stay faithful to the source material, and if it does, will it actually do a good job adapting it? And the answer in this case is yes and yes. Well, mostly at least. There's a few deviations and problems that I'll talk about in a minute, but for the most part, I think The Last of Us does a pretty fucking good job adapting some challenging and complex source material, and doing it in a way that seems mostly fair and balanced. The broad strokes of the game's story are all present and correct here, and some of the most memorable moments are replicated practically beat for beat, especially in the final episodes. The production values, the look and feel of the world, the emotional tone, and the performances are mostly spot on, and overall, I came away from it thinking, good job HBO. Not perfect, but it could have been worse. A lot worse. Now, all that being said, there's definitely some issues that I want to cover, mostly because they're issues that could have been avoided and hold the show back from being truly great. First and foremost of which is the pacing. The season's split into 9 episodes, the first of which are mostly there for backstory and world building. 2 more are devoted almost entirely to flashbacks that have almost no connection to the main narrative, which leaves only 6 real episodes to cover the entire storyline of a game that takes about 20 hours to finish. The result is a narrative pace that judders awkwardly from morbidly obese Glacier to hyperactive 6-year-old after 2 cans of Red Bull. The 2 flashback episodes only add to the problem by delving into self-indulgent backstory that didn't really need to be told. I defended episode 3 at the time because I thought it was well acted and poignantly written, but even I'll admit that it didn't really need to be there, especially when we were still getting to know the main characters at that point. But by far the worst offender was episode 7, which tries to awkwardly crowbar in a piece of superfluous DLC content from the games. It goes nowhere and adds nothing of value, and generally took me out of what should have been a gripping point in the story. And I can't shake the feeling that it was included to stroke Neil Druckmann's ego rather than elevating the narrative. Ellie's gay, by the way. On the subject of Ellie, one of my initial gripes were the clumsy attempts to make her a strong, empowered girl boss right off the bat, instead of earning that kind of development later, and the general unsuitability of the actress playing her. She always seemed to be the one in charge of every conversation, able to win every argument, cope with things that others couldn't, and telling Joel when it was time to move out like she was the real leader of the expedition. It was annoying because the desire to make her Joel's equal the moment they meet each other ultimately undercut the shift in dynamics that happens later in the story. But now that I've made it to the end, I can say that things at least do improve as the story progresses. The show gives her some moments of genuine vulnerability and emotion that she badly needed. Yeah, she still makes a point of doing the exact opposite of what Joel says in almost every situation, proving that there's a fine line between being an independent, strong-willed adolescent and a stubborn, annoying arsehole that puts everyone's lives in danger because she won't listen to people who know more than her. And yeah, Bella Ramsey resembles Ellie about as much as I look like Jennifer Lopez, and her acting range could charitably be described as specific. I'm still not convinced that she was the right choice for the role, but overall, I have to admit that she did at least grow on me as the season progressed. Most of the heavy lifting, though, was left to Pedro Pascal, who does a solid job with the material he's given. I say that because there's a definite distinction between the game and TV versions of Joel, and Pascal's version is clearly a different spin on the character. Less assertive and dominant, more damaged, traumatized and unsure of himself, and starting to slow down as age takes its toll. There's times when he comes dangerously close to being weak and whiny, like you begin to wonder how he even made it this far in such a world, but somehow the script always manages to pull it back just before I get totally disengaged. And well, the final episode proves that he's still very much a force to be reckoned with if you cross him. Another thing that kind of bothered me were the infected, in that, well, we really don't get much of them. And it's a shame because for a post-apocalyptic zombies show, we're a bit light on the old zombies. They tend to show up on their own for little jump scares when it's time to write someone out of the story, but apart from a big blowout action scene in episode 5, they basically fade into the background for the rest of the season. Again, I can't help but think that cutting out those 2 superfluous flashback episodes would have freed up a lot of time and money to work in a bit more tension and action scenes. There's also this weird reluctance to engage with the morality of the world that they're living in. Like, at one point a character keeps referring to the military government of the quarantine zones as fascists, but when Ellie points out that they're literally the only thing holding human society together, her only answer is, "You're so annoying when you argue like this." Fuck off, Riley. This is an important point that needs to be addressed, you self-righteous spam sandwich. If you represent the terrorist group that wants to overthrow the government, then you need a better justification than, "I just don't like them because they order people around." I mean, what's to say that you guys would be any better at running things? Do you have some kind of master plan for how to manage dwindling resources and keep the infected at bay? Ellie's gay, by the way. Likewise, when Ellie encounters a group of cannibals, she's bluntly asked what she would do if she was in their situation. Would she watch her entire community starve to death, or would she contemplate the unthinkable to keep them alive? The thing is, there's no particular attempt to frame this as the desperate actions of a group pushed to breaking point. It's just dismissed as evil and then wiped away with a big fight scene before Ellie or the audience has a chance to think about it. There's also a weirdly out-of-place scene where one character in an isolated farming community proudly declares that they're communists because everyone's expected to pull their weight and contribute to the group.
I didn't like that.
It is that, literally. This is a commune. We're communists.
That's not communism, that's survival. That being said, most of these gripes are really just minor criticisms in an otherwise solid adaptation. The big question was, would The Last of Us keep the perfectly balanced, awesomely ambiguous ending to the game that brought the main character's storyline full circle and posed a bunch of fascinating moral questions without trying to push the audience either way? Or would it try to reshape it to better accommodate the events of the second game? Well, I'm pleased to say that they got it right with this one, delivering a season finale that hits all the same emotional high points as the game, and wisely doesn't try to fuck with what was already a great piece of writing. It's just as brutal, uncompromising, and perfectly structured, and ends on the same note of cautious, flawed optimism. 2 people facing up to an uncertain future together, each willing to compromise for the sake of the other. Oh, if only they knew what was in store for them. Ultimately, The Last of Us might not be the perfect adaptation we all wished for, and in most respects, I generally consider the game to be a richer and more satisfying piece of storytelling, but judging the show on its own merits, I have to admit they did a pretty good job overall. It's a well-written, well-acted, and often gripping post-apocalyptic drama that respects its source material and its audience. Imagine that in 2023. And if you're willing to go into it with an open mind and see it as what it is, an adaptation of an existing piece of source material, real, then well, I think you're probably gonna get something out of The Last of Us. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Hey guys, now you gotta admit, Halo should have took a page out of this book. They stuck to the source material so closely. I mean, things were like beat for beat. Halo should have been that, I think, and I'm sure others think that too. But if you liked it, don't forget, give it that thumbs up. Comment down below, and then finally subscribe and hit the notification bell to notify every time I post a new video. And bye.